Chapter 1. Joe, you've said more than once that you're done talking about Ong's hat, so I have to ask, what are you hoping to get across with this that hasn't been said before?
Well, here's the funny thing. It's all been said before many times. The problem is that anytime I've been interviewed and people have asked me for the full story and I've given it to them, most of it's hit the cutting room floor, except for some very salacious parts they wanted to chop out and use for their own means, which is mostly to generate clicks and hits and listens to their podcast or their radio show. So I've spoken again and again and again to all kinds of people in the media about the story, and they don't want to hear the story. Although when I've asked people who are, I hate to use the word fans, but who are admirers of my work or followers of my work, do you want to hear the full story? They all say yes. So the journalists don't want to hear it because it doesn't suit their preconceived notions of what the story they want to tell. But it's the story, and it's not their story to tell, it's mine. Right. So I decided in order to do that comprehensively, I'm going to have to take it into my own hands. So here we are.
Where did Ong's hat really start? Not like when pen first went to paper on the piece of art referred to as Ong's hat, but where did it really start?
Well, I thought about that, and I don't want to go all the way back into my childhood. And,
right.
Like it all started in my conception, but basically,
sure.
I don't want to tell that story, but you have to kind of like put a pin in it somewhere on the timeline. So for me, if I have to do that, the timeline really has to do with what I would consider my first encounter with Chapel Perilous. And that's about 1984.
Chapel Perilous.
Uh-huh.
What is Chapel Perilous?
Yeah. Well, it's a term that my late friend Robert Anton Wilson made popular that has to do with, I'm just going to break it down to real basic components. It's a breakdown that leads to a breakthrough. This is a point in your life, and I was lucky that I was young when it happened, so it was kind of an initiation or a rite of passage for me. But it's a point in your life where you get moved to a new timeline or a new path in your life. You come to a realization that there's maybe some things that you're doing that are not leading to a good place, and it's a full reckoning that you have with yourself, with your subconscious or with your higher self or whatever, however you want to term that. But basically, it takes you to a place where you no longer have the ability to dodge or make excuses for anything that you're doing or have done in your past, and you have the reckoning.
Sure.
Some people have called that the come to Jesus moment. I don't use that term because I understand why it's used, but I don't use that term because of the religious connotations. But some people will know it as the come to Jesus moment. It's basically where you hit rock bottom, admitting that what you're doing is not working and that you're going to have to do something different. And that's a very painful thing to do.
Yeah. I remember Robert Anton Wilson said that you reach Chapel Perilous and you're faced with two choices. You either become totally agnostic or stone paranoid. And there's is no third option. Yeah.
And there's different ways to put that, but yeah, but he's right.
And it's interesting to hear you put that way, especially with the come to Jesus moment, because Chapel Perilous, the original connotation was about the Grail quest.
Yes. Well, from the Wolfram von Eschenbach tale, which is the pre-Christianized version of the Grail lore. And basically, the whole thing is an analogy for a young man's journey into adulthood. And the first thing that happens to Parsifal as he's going down the road is he comes across this place which he later finds out was the place he was always after. And you can see the analogies here, like the Jungian analogies are just rife. But you come across this place where you later discover like, oh, that's the place where I was supposed to be going or where I was going, but I didn't know it yet. I wasn't wise enough to realize that I encountered the Grail very early in my journey, but I didn't know it. So I went looking for the Grail after I encountered the Grail. And Chapel Perilous is a place where you have the reckoning, and you either completely crack up or you have a breakthrough. And that's why I said it's a moment of breakdown or breakthrough. So if you've ever done any kind of shamanic vision questing or a vigil or however you want to put it, if you've ever done the work and you basically reach a point where you disassemble yourself, or you are disassembled, I should say, like you really don't have any part in it. You get disassembled, and then if you're ready, then you will put yourself back together in a new mode, and you will come back as a new person.
Yeah, it's the place where the center of the self that you've built up for yourself cannot hold anymore, and you have to face that. Yeah, the center will not hold. And so, how did that happen to Joe Matheny?
Well, see, that's the thing. I didn't see it coming. I was a person who had been studying paganism very early in my life, and through that, I came into touch with some things that triggered some things in my mind that I probably wasn't ready for, but luckily I fell into the right situations that helped me get through it, because I definitely didn't have a support network for this kind of thing. And I definitely didn't live in a culture and don't live in a culture even where there's any facilities for a young person going through a rite of passage. There's no elders that you can reach out to, because that's not who we are anymore. We've pushed our elders off in the corner, and we've pushed our young people off in another corner, and there's like no communication between the two. It's a generational gap.
Yeah.
Luckily, I grew up in a multi-generational house, so I still had some elders that I could talk to. So that kind of helped. And then I made friends with older people who were around to help me. So I had enough of a support network to keep me from completely cracking up. But I had a Philip K. Dick moment. I was walking down the street in Chicago, where I grew up, and I think I was 22, 3, somewhere around there. And remember, this is 1984. All of a sudden, there were these lines that appeared, glowing lines that appeared on all the buildings all around me and the streets and everything. And then there was Hebrew letters dripping down. It very reminiscent of what later you saw in the movie The Matrix, much later, years later, where you saw those lines with the weird characters dripping down them.
Yeah.
It was like that, only it wasn't green. This was all golden. And the letters were Hebrew.
This reminds me, not in the Hebrew, but of the artist Alison Gray. She has these series of pieces called the Secret Writing Project, which sounds very much like that.
Well, that's the funny thing is, like, I'd never seen anything like this before. It reminded me of something from my childhood. Was in the 70s, there was these weird sculptures that got popular, and they were basically like a tree in a bowl of gravel, and then there was like nylon fishing line that was hung from this tree, and then oil was dripped down these things, and it was lit up. And so you would this like sculpture, basically, like it was real popular to have in your living room in the 70s. And it was like a sculpture of dripping oil that glowed. So you couldn't really tell, like when you looked at it, you're like, what the hell is that? It was like something out of a LSD dream, Those things were cool. But so that's what I came to my mind, because there was nothing else in my world that was like that, except a couple months after it happened. I never had an explanation for why it happened. I just like got on a bus and kept like navigating around this world that was glowing, and Hebrew letters were falling down it. And I was thinking, this is it. I've actually lost my mind, and I'm encountering what I was warned about when I was doing all that LSD, which is you're gonna have a flashback. And I'm like, I guess they're real, and this is it, because I always like blew it off like flashbacks aren't real, but then I'm in the midst of this thing, and like, what am I going to do? I'm telling the people, I can't tell people on the street, like, do you see what I see? Like, no, you can't do that.
I'm going to betray everything I've ever stood for and ask, were you sober?
Yes. Yeah.
So I understand why you might have thought you were well and truly losing your mind.
Yeah. I thought this is it, and then I finally got home, closed all the doors, closed all the shades, and eventually fell asleep. But I woke up and I was fine. Everything went away.
And it never happened again?
No, not like just like out of the blue. Of course, I mean, I did psychedelics after that, and I had experiences, but like nothing like that, where it just like intruded on my reality. Then months later, I got a magazine called Gnosis Magazine. And on the cover was the first picture I'd ever seen painted by, we were just talking about, Alex Gray.
Interesting.
And you can look this up. If you look at the first edition of Gnosis Magazine, it's an Alex Gray picture on the cover. It's a picture of a head, a person's head, and they're outlined with the lines and the Hebrew letters and I just went, oh shit, that's what I saw. Somebody else has seen this.
That is a Chapel Perilous moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like more comforting if you think it's just yours.
No, actually, it was comforting to know that I wasn't alone. So it kind of like gave me comfort to know, like, oh, other people have seen this. And I'm sure Alex probably saw it under the influence of something, or maybe not, but but somebody else had seen it. So it's like, okay, I'm not completely insane. Other people have seen this.
It also means the world is much weirder, perhaps, than you'd previously considered.
Well, that's the thing, is like I had this intrusion that kind of said, you've always had these suspicions that there's more to life than you are seeing in every day, which is kind of the basis of the Matrix in a way. But, and other things that came into play here, but like basically something was telling me or showing me that like there really is more to it. It's not just a suspicion. Let me show you, like, let me pull back the kimono a little bit, have a peek,
Yeah.
And what made it so disconcerting and what made it a Chapel Perilous moment is that I didn't bring it on. I didn't invoke it. It just intruded.
Right.
What got me through it, and when I think back about it now, is I already had experience with heroic doses of psychedelics. So how was I able to get on a bus and get myself home and get in the door? How was I able to do that? Well, I'd done that before under heavy psychedelics. I'm like, well, I got to go home now. And party's over and I need to get my ass home.
Yeah, you're actually kind of practiced at that.
I was practicing navigating when I wasn't in my right mind. So, I made it home, and then the next day I woke up and everything was fine. And I went, oh, it's kind of like that one time I took way too much LSD. It's kind of like that. So, again, like I said, I had experience with navigating the 3D space when my mind was clearly in a 5D space. So that's how I did it. Yeah.
Now you mentioned that is a Philip K. Dick moment. Elaborate on that.
Well, okay. How I get to Philip K. Dick is interesting. So I'm living in Chicago. I'm freshly out of school. I'm back, from the West. I've been out West going to school, and then I came back to Chicago, and kind of like in that after school, what am I going to do? Am I going to backpack around Europe? Am I going to, what the hell, am I going to get a job? What kind of job am I going to get? And so I went back I fell back on what I knew, which was working in record stores. And I started working in a record store. I was in a band. I was always in a band back then. And I was in a band, and my guitar player, who used to be amused by how much LSD I did, so much so that that my nickname in the band was Sid, which was a double reference, Sid Barrett and Acid, because I was always high on acid, according to them.
I was also unhealthily sort of obsessed with Sid Barrett in my early years as a musician.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Who wouldn't be?
I think it happens.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't be? Exactly.
Well, I'm still fond of Sid. I think, especially
absolutely,
because I found out some things about him that I didn't know. I think the book that I read was a friend of his was called Very Irregular Head, I think it was. He actually laid out some theories based on things that he knew about Sid that the public didn't really know. was that he may have kind of faked his breakdown to get out of his record contract.
Oh, wow.
He was very unhappy being in the record contract with Pink Floyd.
Oh, wow.
He's like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do, which he was saying before. He was like, I don't want to do this. And you know, like they were like, and everybody else in the band was like, Sid, this is our break. This is what we were trying to do. And he's like, that's not what I was trying to do. He wanted to like just play live shows and do weird light shows and like have unscripted freak out sessions. And, you know, he was a true artist.
Yeah.
And the other guys, I'm not saying they're not, but I think that they were more interested in the money and in having a contract. And Sid did it at first to go along with the band, but then he realized that he doesn't like being under contract and being told what to create as art. And
he was more of an artist than a musician.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, he wasn't a careerist. That he wasn't. Right. So, yeah. So anyway, I had a guitar player who was also a friend. And he said to me one day, we were working at the record store together, and I said something surreal because I was always saying something surreal. He just looked at me. He goes, "You need to read Illuminatus trilogy." And I'm like, "What? Mm-hmm. What's that?" And then he's like, "Oh, you should read it. You should read it, man. Trust me. You of all people should read Illuminatus trilogy." I'm okay. So I started looking for it in the libraries, and I couldn't find it because like everybody that had it in the card catalog, this is before computers, that had it in the card catalog, it was not on the shelf. So apparently it's like a Crowley book. Like it's not going to stay in the library long. So it was stolen.
Right.
And the only thing I could find by the same author was a book called Cosmic Trigger. So I'm like, okay, well, this is better than nothing. And I ordered Illuminatus trilogy at a bookstore, which you couldn't find it in the bookstores. Like it was a weird period of time where it had fallen out of favor and fallen out of print. And it was pretty soon going to come back into the print, but it was kind of like at a lull, you know, like it was not the most popular thing yet. And so, or at the time, because it had its heyday in the 70s and then it kind of dipped and then it came back in the 80s. But anyway, I found Cosmic Trigger and I read it. And of course it blew my mind because it did what it said. It's a Cosmic Trigger. And
that's the book I recommend to people now who want to, and should say that's Illuminatus and Cosmic Trigger are by Robert Anton Wilson.
Yeah.
And Cosmic Trigger is the one I recommend to people now. I used to recommend Illuminatus, but, you know, that's probably secondary. Cosmic Trigger is the one that, you know, for me, that book was like, holy shit, I'm not actually completely alone intellectually. You know, it felt like for the first time someone was speaking my language about this type of stuff.
Exactly. So, like everything he was saying was like landing for me, like he was sticking the landing, so to speak. And so I was taking a lot of notes. Whenever I read a book, I had a spiral notebook next to me, and I would like write down like all these things, like, you know, look this book up, find this author, go find this painting. And one of the things he pointed out was like you should find the Valis trilogy by Philip K. Dick. And in 1984. The only thing I knew about Philip K. Dick was that Blade Runner was based on something he had written.
Yeah.
That's all I knew. And Philip K. Dick was not the household name that he is now back then.
Yeah, which is really interesting.
He deserved it, and he got what he deserved. He became the household name that he deserved in his lifetime, but he didn't get it, unfortunately, in his lifetime, but he got it. So I went looking for this Valis trilogy, and now in 1984, Valis was out of print. You could not find it to save your life. You had to find a used copy. So I go looking all over the city of Chicago in used bookstores. Again, before the internet, before computers, I had to like just go into used bookstores and, you know, go up and down the shelves, or like in some cases you had to go through boxes of used books that were sitting around and looking and looking and looking. Most people hadn't even heard of it. I eventually started calling bookstores because it's just like I couldn't find it. And I would look up in the yellow pages for used bookstores, and I would call and say, do you have this book? And one person said they had it. One person in the whole city that was I able to find a copy of this book. And it was like a bookstore I'd never heard of before. It was relatively close to my neighborhood. And so I hop on the bus and I go over there and I walk up to the store, and the store doesn't really look like, it looks like a store front that used to be something else, but it was closed and the windows were covered in newspaper.
Weird
and
already.
So, yeah. And so I knock on the door, and this elderly lady with this like shocking white hair and these bright blue eyes, like opened the door. And I told her, I'm the one that talked to you on the phone about Valis. She goes, oh, yeah. She comes in, and she gave off this like super grandmother vibe. You know what I mean? She's like, yeah. You felt very comfortable around her. You were like, oh, yeah, like the grandma I never had. And so she takes me in the store. She was taking care of me, man. So she takes me in the store, and she like shows me the box, and all the books are in boxes. I mean, it looks like it used to be a bookstore that was closed. There were no shelves. There were just boxes of books everywhere.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I go in, and she like shows me the box, and I go through the box, and I'm like, oh, Valis. Oh, Divine Invasion. You have both of them. And then she looks at me, and she's like, and I grab the paperback of each, because like, you know, like I was very cost conscious at that time in my life. I'm like, you got to get things cheap because I don't have a lot of money. And she like looks at me, and she's like, pulls out this hardback version of Valis. And she's like, you sure you don't want this one? And I look at it, and I'm thinking, yeah, don't know if I want to copy, if I want to like collect this, or, you know, I don't want to spend the money on the hardback version because it probably costs more, you know. And I thought about it, and I'm like, nah, I'll just take the paperback, because I thought about, like, you know, it's easier to carry around in my pocket. And
makes sense.
So I bought it for like, I don't even remember, but it was like really cheap. And then I go home. I bought the paperback. And then I go home. And as soon as I get home, I think I should have bought that hardback. And I don't know why I thought that. I'm like, there's a reason why she told me that I should look at that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So then I'm like, well, I'll go back tomorrow. I'll get the hardback too, because neither of them were that expensive, you know. But like, we're talking like probably 75 cents versus $2, you know. And
sure,
you know, to a punk rocker playing at a rock band and working at a record store, that's a lot of money in 1984, especially. Sure. That's a slice of pizza, man, and a cola. Even.
I know that feeling though. The feeling of like something insignificant or small, like, you know, buying a hardcover book instead of a paperback. And, you know, I've always attributed it to my own particular alphabet soup brain. But the feeling of like, it's kind of important that this mundane option is picked, or that there's something more to this mundane option. Like it's a very familiar feeling to me. And was that sort of the feeling? Well,
yeah, I kind of wrote it off as buyer's remorse a little bit, but then I was like, yeah. but there's more to it. I mean, there's a reason why she asked me if I was sure.
Right.
You don't say that to somebody like, are you sure? Like, you don't say that for no reason. You know, so she had information that I didn't have, and I didn't know what it was.
Right.
And then I'm like, come on, dude, we're talking about an extra $3. It's like, skip having pizza for lunch this week or something, but like, you know, go get the book.
Right.
So I go back to the bookstore the next day. I didn't call. I just went. Because it was, well, now I knew where it was, and it's relatively close to where I lived. And I'm knocking on the door, no answer. The first floor of the house, and this happens in Chicago, used to happen in Chicago a lot. There was a lot of buildings that were commercial on the first floor, and then residential on the second and maybe third floor if there was a third floor above it. And this was the case with this. So it was, the storefront was the commercial version, first floor. And then there was a residential second and third floor above it. And there was a railing and a porch on the second floor. And the guy who lived on the second floor, like, looks over the railing, and he's like, you know, what do you want? And, you know, basic Chicago guy. You can never, like, Chicago people talk to you and you think they're angry at you when they're not. This is the way the way we talk. Like, when I first moved to California, people were like confused for a long time. They're like, he seems like he's always angry at me. It's like, no, that's how he talks, dude. He grew up in Chicago. So anyway, he does his like, what do you want? You know, it's like, well, you know, I'm like, hey, the lady who runs the bookstore, I wanted to talk to her again. There's a book she has that I want. And then the guy got like really pissed off. He's like, there's no bookstore down there. What are you trying to pull? Fuck off. And he's like, it just tells me to like, get away from here. Yeah. He's like telling me to get away and fuck off. And I was like, what? Oh, okay. I just like walk away from the store. I'm thinking like, oh, I guess I'll call her. Like maybe that's her angry son or something, you know, or
sure. Yeah.
Or the guy that owns the building was trying to sleep and I'm waking them up, you know, because I was banging on the door. I was like, come on, you got to hear me. So that was on a mission, you know.
For sure.
So I go back home and I call and I call and I call and I call. And eventually the phone line is disconnected. So maybe
weird.
Yeah, it had a weird feeling to it. Now, here's me being rational.
Sure.
Maybe because all the books were in boxes and there were no shelves, she was closing up shop, you know? And,
entirely possible.
And maybe dude upstairs thought that bookstores closed. What the fuck's he talking about? And maybe he doesn't know that she was in there that day. Maybe I just caught her when I called. Maybe I just got lucky. Like the one person
maybe
who had
just about to set up shop
or something. What happened was the bookstore never reopened, if it was ever open. The phone line got disconnected, and that was it. Like the store sat vacant, and I kept going back and back. I kept trying to catch at a different time of day. Like I kept trying, you know, and like eventually I gave up because like, okay, nobody's in that store. Nobody's going to answer the door, and now there's not a phone.
Well, the real fucked up thing is that like that sounds like a scene from a Philip K. Dick novel.
I didn't know this yet. Okay, I didn't know this yet.
Right? Yeah.
But I was about to discover because I had never read a Philip K. Dick book before. And all I knew was that when I asked somebody, "Have you heard of the book Valis?" they said no, and I said it's the author's Philip K. Dick, and they said, "Oh, the guy that did Blade Runner." I'm like, and I'd seen Blade Runner,
right? And
I'm like, oh, that's the guy that wrote Blade Runner? Because I didn't even know that he was the guy that wrote Blade Runner. Because they don't make a big deal out of it. Like in Blade Runner, it was like it's a Ridley Scott movie. It's Harrison Ford. It's like everything but Philip K. Dick, you know? Because that's the way they unless you're Stephen King, that's how you get treated as an author in Hollywood. So I've discovered. But you know, you're like secondary or tertiary to the story. Doesn't matter that you wrote it. Yeah, I didn't know anything about Philip K. This was my introduction to Philip K. Dick. Find a book that was out of print. Find a place, the one place in Chicago that told me they had it, and then have a mysterious encounter to getting the book. Welcome to Philip K. Dick land, Joe Matheny, right?
I mean, it's the perfect introduction, especially to Valis. Like,
yeah. And then
something.
And then I read Valis, and I'm like, what the fuck? And so that put me on a Philip K. Dick tangent where I was trying to find everything I could about him. Yeah. And like, who is this guy and what in this fictional story? And then I ran across in another bookshop, I ran across this book, which is now out of print. If you can find it, it's like $100+, but it might be worth it for most people if you're out there listening and you want to find this book. It's called The Last Testament of Philip K. Dick. And I think Greg Rickman was the writer. He was a journalist. He worked for different like Rolling Stone and places like that. And he did the last in-depth interview with Philip K. Dick and published it as a book. And I found that, and I read it, and that's when I discovered that Valis wasn't entirely a fiction.
Right.
Because he talks openly about the pink beam and when he had the layover, when he was like walking around and there was overlay between his everyday life and ancient Rome, like all the stuff that happened to Phil, that he like for the first time he like just laid it out there.
Don't know about that. This is from Wikipedia on the Pink Light episode, also known as 2374. So Dick started the journal after his visionary experiences in February and March 1974, which he called 2374. These visions began shortly after Dick had 2 impacted wisdom teeth removed. When a delivery person from the pharmacy brought his pain medication, he noticed the fish necklace she wore and asked her what it meant. She responded that it was a symbol used by the early Christians, and in that moment, Dick's religious experiences began, and then quoting Dick. In that instant, as I stared at the gleaming fish sign and heard her words, I suddenly experienced What I later learned is called anamnesis, a Greek word meaning literally loss of forgetfulness. I remembered who I was and where I was. In an instant, in the twinkling of an eye, it all came back to me. And not only could I remember it, but I could see it. The girl was a secret Christian, and so was I. We lived in fear of detection by the Romans. We had to communicate with cryptic signs. She had just told me all of this, and it was true. For a short time, as hard as this is to believe or explain, I saw fading into view the black, prison-like contours of hateful Rome. But of much more importance, I remembered Jesus, who had just recently been with us, and had gone temporarily away, and would very soon return. My emotion was one of joy. We were secretly preparing to welcome him back. It would not be long, and the Romans did not know. They thought he was dead, forever dead. That was our great secret, our joyous knowledge. Despite all appearances, Christ was going to return, and our delight and anticipation were boundless. End quote. And then, from Wikipedia again, in the following weeks, Dick experienced further visions, including a hallucinatory slideshow of abstract patterns, and an information-rich beam of pink light. In the exegesis, he theorized as to the origins and meaning of these experiences, frequently concluding that they were religious in nature. The being that originated the experiences is referred to by several names, including Zebra, God, and the vast active living intelligence system. From 1974 until his death in 1982, Dick wrote the exegesis by hand in late-night writing sessions, sometimes composing as many as 150 pages in a sitting. In total, it consists of approximately 8,000 pages of notes, only a small portion of which have been published. It's not, so Philip K. Dick is not just Blade Runner. It's not just standard-ass sci-fi.
No. Yeah, it's
religious in scope.
Yeah, it's Gnosticism.
Yeah. And the exegesis is his, Gnostic writings, which was not published at the time.
Yeah, and it's still not all been published. I mean, I know somebody who saw the complete exegesis, and they said that it was a filing cabinet full of paper. 8,000 pages. That's a lot of pages. And
that is a lot of pages.
And so basically, I go on this. It kind of blew my mind. And when I read Valis and then Divine Invasion. And then I followed it up by reading this Last Testament. It kind of blew my mind. And I'm like, wait, how have I ended up here? It all started with my guitar player telling me I should read Illuminatus trilogy, which I couldn't find. But I found Cosmic Trigger. And by reading Cosmic Trigger, I find out about Valis, which I couldn't find until eventually I did find it, et cetera, et cetera. So, it started to look to me like I was following breadcrumbs that were being left by something or someone.
Yeah.
And we'll say something,
How close together were these experiences?
One on top of one after the other. There was no breathing room.
You were in the slipstream.
It's I was in the slipstream, man. I was I went from this to that to this to that. And then right after that I found Illuminatus trilogy, and I started reading it. And then this is the time that Falcon Press had started. And if you don't know Falcon Press became New Falcon, and then they became Original Falcon. And the reason they changed names is because when they started Falcon Press, they got a cease and desist letter from some other publishing house that was using the name, had been using it first, and so they had to change it. So they called it New Falcon after that. But I discovered Falcon Press, which was the publisher of Timothy Leary, Robert Anton Wilson, Israel Regardie, Aleister Crowley, on and on and on.
Yeah.
Ansar Ali, his first publisher, and a bunch of other things. So this was when it was all new, right at the edging up on the middle of the 80s. The New Age thing was happening, right? And so even though these people that we just mentioned were not New Age, making air quotes, they were able to ride the New Age wave, and there was an interest in the Golden Dawn, a renewed interest in the Golden Dawn, and so Falcon was. Most people don't know this, but Falcon, Regardie, Hyatt, all those people were the House of Horus, which was a temple, was a Golden Dawn lodge.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
I'm trying to remember which book Wilson said it. I think I can't remember which one, but one of his early books, he even said the Golden Dawn has much more to do with the publishing of this book than you may realize. And what he was referring to was the fact that literally Falcon was the public face for regarding the Golden Dawn material, because like they were the first ones to publish the Golden Dawn Complete System, Golden Dawn Magic, and all that stuff. They were the first ones to republish all that.
Right. I've got that big black brick sitting behind me right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so all that stuff was like brand new to the world. It'd been around before, but like this was the revival.
Right.
Yeah, so this all started in a lot of ways with a mystical intrusion. I keep calling that because I didn't ask for it. I didn't do a ritual. I didn't prepare myself, especially like because it came on so unexpected. It was more impactful in a lot of ways. So like it made an imprint on me.
It was a divine invasion of sorts.
It was a divine invasion. A good way to put it. So I'm looking for. So I started going to like this almost manic mode of got to get more information. Got to get more information. Got to get more information.
Now, was this like challenging to your worldview, or like, or was it a confirmation of your worldview at the time?
Well, you can look at it two ways. It was a confirmation of my worldview, but it challenged most people around me.
Okay. They
were confused and uncertain about what I was going through. And so gotcha. I wouldn't say that I got support. Concern and borderline, maybe. In fact, I know there probably were discussions of some sort of, like I needed to be talked to. I needed help.
Some type of intervention.
Yeah, there was like I know. In fact, I know there was a couple of interventions that were discussed behind my back. Years later, people told me, and I'm like, yeah, I kind of suspected. What would you have done if we would have tried to, stage an intervention? I would have told you to fuck off. It's like I had no problem. I had no problems with what I was going through. I was discovering all this new information, and none of it made me feel bad.
Yeah, that's it. Because Chapel Perilous is often discussed in terms of a negative thing.
Yeah,
that's generally what people feel. And to hear you talk about it, it sounds like you were enjoying the hell out of it.
Well, here's the thing is, and other people have pointed this out. I've never had a bad psychedelic trip. I've had experiences that other people would have considered a bad trip, but I didn't consider it a bad trip. Right.
Yeah.
In fact, a couple of times I had visuals that would have been classified as a bad trip, and they made me laugh. And I said to whatever my brain or whatever was doing this, I'm like, that's the best you can do. I've seen better than that. If you're trying to scare me, I've seen much better.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like you're very accepting of the weird, even that early. I mean, yes, it's not.
Well, dude, I've always been weird. Yeah. Well, I've always been weird. I've always cultivated the weird, encouraged the weird. Well, because I'm weird, I end up with weird friends. So I always had a weird support group around me. I did discover later in life that like maybe some of these people that claim to be weird weren't really willing to go as far as I was willing to go. But I had a test pilot's mentality a lot of times with trying on different realities. Let's put it that way.
I can sympathize with that.
Yeah, I'd go farther than a lot of people would go, and I didn't, I didn't go, oh, I'm gonna go crazy. Like I had the experience walking down Lincoln Avenue, and all of a sudden my world is turned upside down, and everywhere I look, I'm seeing things, and I was like, okay, well, like I've got brain damage, or I'm having a flashback, or I've just lost my fucking mind. But in the meantime, I need to get home.
Exactly. Either. However you want to call it, I have to navigate this. Like I'll deal with this later. Like right now, I just have to like put that aside. Like my concern for it, I'll put aside, and I have to navigate this. But that's part of who I am. That's part of my makeup, because I've been in situations where it was like I lived through
the Loma Prieta earthquake at the epicenter. And like, I've lived through a lot of disasters when everybody else was freaking out and panicking and wondering what to do. And I have this weird ability where I can turn that off and say, first, we got to do these things.
Yep. I have the exact same ability, and as well as a lot of my good friends. It's like that. We will worry. There will be time for panic later, and it's like something just shuts off. Like that entire panic fear center just shuts off as catastrophe is happening, and you just do.
Yep.
And then it'll be like not finding my keys that actually spins me into a fucking panic. But
oh yeah, exactly. So it's like the stupid shit where there's like there's nothing at stake.
Right. Exactly.
That's the stuff that will spin you out. But like, meanwhile, there's like giant rocks falling from the sky, and you're like, we need to get shelter now, and we need to make sure we have water and food, and you're like, that's how my brain works. And you know, eventually, like we'll get through the disaster, and everybody else will be like thankful, like I'm glad you held it together, and then I'll have my breakdown. I'm like, holy shit, we just almost died, you know. Then my brain will register like, you just almost died, you fucking idiot. So that's how my brain works. So that's how I got home, and so I'm thinking about all this stuff and like following these leads, which, you know, for me, it's all very weird. And if I look back on it now, like I'm thinking like, well, how did you not like freak out by all this? But for me, it was actually encouraging to see that, you know, again, I'm 23. So I'm like, all this time I've wondered if I lived in a responsive universe. Like, am I separate from the universe? Am I one with the universe? If I'm one with the universe, I should be able to get response here, you know, somehow. And now I'm seeing the one thing that I was wondering if I was ever going to see, and the universe is talking to me basically.
Right.
And so I was a little freaked out, but not as freaked out as I was encouraged by the fact that like, oh, there's something there. There really is something there.
And I mean, to be fair, you know, the people around you that were concerned for your sanity, it's reasonable. It's a reasonable concern if you're just, you know, not the other weirdos you choose to be around, but people who aren't into that. Like you could call this, you know, there's a diagnosis that someone would lay on that. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was having a mania attack of, you know, like, of some sort, which is okay. And that's fine. And I'm okay being diagnosed.
Exactly.
I'm okay it being diagnosed as such, except that I don't have a stigma for a mania attack the way other people do. So what I discovered is going through this process was a lot of people who like to play weird are just doing that. They're playing. Right.
They haven't actually gone nuts and reassembled themselves.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not playing. I'm looking for the edge all the time. And that's one time that I like the first time that I really, really found it and said, okay, there's something here. You've kind of lost your mind, but you've also discovered that there's other people who have lost their mind in a similar fashion, and they turned out okay. Mm-hmm. You know, like
there is actually an edge.
In Cosmic Trigger, Robert Anton Wilson starts out early talking about the fact that, you know, he had the reason he decided to follow the Buckminster Fuller plan of, you know, looking for the bright side of things and always trying to stay positive is because he was standing on the Brooklyn Bridge about to toss himself off. And he said, I'm going to give it one more try.
Yeah.
And then if it didn't work, I'm going to come out here and toss myself off this bridge. But he literally went on the bridge to toss himself off. And then found one more reason to stick around. Give it one more go. And then he did. And look how he turned out. So I'm like, okay, not everybody that has this experience has to end up in a dismal place. It doesn't have to end with me in a straitjacket in a rubber room.
No.
I can follow this to the end. And I'd been fascinated with insanity since a young age.
Yeah.
Because I'd seen people lose their mind, and I'd seen how they ended up. And to me, I made an observation, which nobody ever pointed out to me, but this was my personal observation as a young person. I said, every person that I saw go, quote unquote, insane ended up in a bad place because they fought against it and they were unhappy about this so-called insanity. And they were ostracized by people around them who said, there's something wrong with you. You need to take medication. You need to go into this place so you can be separated from the rest of us.
Right.
And like, I didn't have the language yet to understand that they were experiencing a failed initiation. I didn't know that then.
Right.
But I did realize that they were unhappy. Something about their state of mind was making them unhappy, and the people around them were enforcing that unhappiness and telling them that you're in a place that you shouldn't be.
Well, they didn't have either an internal or external support system to deal with that.
Exactly. And then I met some happy, crazy people.
The best kind.
Yeah.
Of
they
people.
Were batshit crazy, absolutely happy with their lot in life, and they had no worries. And they were enjoying life. In fact, I noticed that they were enjoying life a lot more than most people I saw that claimed to be the sane.
Right.
The sanest among us seemed to be the most uptight and most unhappy from what I could tell. And at this time, I had not run across R.D. Laing yet, but a little bit later in life, I would run across his work, which basically I'd already come to the conclusion. But then when I read his stuff, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I thought. He basically said, if you're having problems, psychological problems, a lot of it is based on the fact that you think you have a problem, and it's not really a problem. It's something you need to work through, and you need to have a place where you can go and have all the space you need and be encouraged to work through that thing. And so his form of therapy was to build a safe space for these people and to let them work through their shit.
Yeah. Let them process that stream of information wherever it's coming from, even
exactly.
if it's just the internal systems trying to get something across to you. Like, resisting it is not the way.
Yeah, resisting causes the pain.
Right. And the pain causes the panic. And
and all of it causes each other, but like the resistance causes the pain, and the pain makes it unpleasant. And so you get into this cycle of like, something's not right with me. Well, why? Why is something not right with you? Because somebody told you? Well, what is really, at the end of the day, what is their intention behind telling you that? You're not being a good worker bee? You're not keeping the peace?
Something about you that's challenging their own trip.
Yeah, all the things that they, like, if you sit them down and really query them and talk to them long enough, you'll discover, like, all these things that they find offensive about your behavior is really that they wish they could be more like you or that you're triggering some of their insecurities.
Right.
So about that time, I came across Crossing of the Abyss, the concept of the Crossing of the Abyss in Hermetic Magic.
Yes. Yeah. Now, I wanted to ask you about that because that's another thing, just like Philip K. Dick, that has a reputation. And also just kind of like Chapel Perilous, it's not well defined in any real way. What is your attitude and your definition of the Crossing of the Abyss?
Well, I came across the Crossing of the Abyss because I'd started to hang out with Hermetic magicians.
Okay.
And it was brought up and waved around like a scary object from time to time.
Like, as it still is from many times.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody tried to do the Crossing of the Abyss and they failed and they went insane. So like, okay, I'm going to study up on this. What is this Crossing of the Abyss thing? I was already well versed in shamanism and natural magic. And I looked at it and I kind of laid it all out and looked at it and I'm like, okay. So basically, the people that say such and such failed at the Crossing of the Abyss and then went mad doesn't understand the Crossing of the Abyss. Because the point of the Crossing of the Abyss is like the shamanic journey is to go somewhere and to go mad and to come back with the knowledge that the madness gives you. Because going mad gives you knowledge. As I had just discovered through this whole thing where I thought I'd like lost my mind on the street. And now all of a sudden I relaxed into it, and then I was taken on this journey where something, and I don't want to put a name on it, but like basically some sort of providence was dropping these breadcrumbs for me and going, here's another thing for you. Here's another. Oh, you got that? Okay, here's another thing for you. And as long as I just relaxed and followed it and didn't question where it was coming from and didn't say, I'm going insane.
Right.
Like I was cool. I was getting knowledge. Like it's what I always wanted was knowledge. Like I want knowledge from the other side because I know it's there, but how do you access it? And then I think that's why, and I'm not going to say chosen, but like my brain decided to like one day go, okay, I'm going to turn these circuits on.
Right.
And I'm going to give you that knowledge. What are you going to do with it?
Right. Yeah. It was time to flip the antenna on and see if you could handle it.
So I'm looking at the crossing of the abyss and I'm going, oh, this is being completely misunderstood. It's like the point of this ritual and the point of this whole thing is to go and lose your mind, because I don't see that as a bad thing, especially when you look at what mind means these days, right? Like to go and shatter your concept of consensus reality and come back with something new, which you can only do if you have the breakdown and then have the breakthrough.
Right.
Every breakthrough is necessarily preceded by a breakdown. And I had just gone through that.
That has proven to be true.
Yeah, and I got it. And I'm looking at all these people like wandering around, waving their fingers in the air and talking about the crossing of the abyss and so-and-so lost his mind. And I'm thinking, okay, who are these people that are saying this, first of all? These are people that their whole purpose in being in magical orders is to accrue degrees. Right?
Right.
They're bureaucrats. Like they're joiners. Like these are the people that like, and I had this conversation a couple years later with Christopher Hyatt and Rigardi. And I said, I think I'm going to leave the Golden Dawn because I think I've gotten all of it I need. From my perspective, the order's only here to go through it until you don't need it anymore and to move on. And if I sat here in the middle ranks, I could just camp out and just accrue like, orders and just and get my degrees. Like, and I saw people doing that. And I'm like, that's not why I'm here. I'm not here for that.
Right.
I'm here for knowledge and I'm here for a breakthrough, which I feel like I got from the Golden Dawn. And then everything else above where I was felt like, it was bullshit. It was pomp and circumstance.
Yeah. So do you see like the degrees thing as a metaphor for stages more than like something that is necessarily conferred by, a human authority? Because there's a couple different philosophies on that.
Well, I mean, the way I see it is not necessarily the way to see it, but it's the way I see it.
Right.
Is I think that like above a certain level, I think when you first get into something like the Golden Dawn, we'll just use that as an example because I did go through that system. The first thing you do is you train your muscle memory to memorize the rituals.
Right.
And then while you're doing the rituals, you get to a point where you don't have to think about doing them anymore. You don't have to sit there with a book open or remind yourself, oh, and now I do this. And now it's like when you get to the point where you can, like, let's just say the blessing banishment ritual of the pentagram. We'll use that one example. When you can go from A to Z on that ritual and never have to think about what you're doing next, it becomes muscle memory. Then you start thinking about all the talismanic visualizations that you're doing while you're doing those, machination, those signs.
Which would be like the qualities of the four archangels and stuff, the qualities of the four elements.
Exactly. What are the elements?
What they feel like. Yeah.
What are their colors? Like all of that, what does, Mikhail has a sword. What does it mean?
Yeah.
What is his element? Like all those things. Then you like kind of get all that down and you don't have to think about that anymore. And then you'll have the moment. All of a sudden, like you might even like some people drop out before they get to this point what I'm about to describe. Mm-hmm. But I'm very tenacious and I didn't. but I got like real close to like, why the fuck am I doing this? It's like, I'm getting nothing out of this. Like, God, this is stupid. Like, I feel like a Freemason.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, and you keep your journal and you write down your thoughts and like, your feelings before, your feelings during, your feelings after. You're like, you start putting, and then you start seeing like all these connections and you start putting them together in your head. And then you do a ritual one day and bam, something happens. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's why I was doing it. Who was it that told me? Somebody told me, I can't remember. It was either Hyatt or somebody. They said basically you show up every day until at one point you realize you're turning your light on and you're saying open for business. And that's what it felt like bam. Like I literally physically felt the base of my spine start to tingle. And then it felt like something ran up my spine to my head. And then I heard a crack, which was like static crack. And it's like it was like a lightning bolt went through me. And I saw it like flashing through my eyes. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's why I was doing it. But I had to stop thinking about all of it. And you can only get there. First, you have to memorize it. Then you have to do it. And literally, you're taking it into your body as muscle memory. And when you've incorporated, because like if you know the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, you call down from above through your body, through all your chakras to the base of your feet, which are grounded, your heels. Right. And you're calling it down and grounding it into the earth. What Margot Adler described as calling down the moon, which was my first exposure to magic was through natural magic.
Yeah.
In that book, she actually, she basically is a handbook for like, here's all the different kinds of magic that you can do and what they're about. And she describes the Golden Dawn. She describes Discordianism. She describes all this stuff, Yeah. Which like, I know when I finally got around to reading Wilson, I'm like, oh, I read about this thing drawing down the moon. Yeah. Discordianism. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
But you weren't that experienced with the Golden Dawn style at this point in your life, though.
Well, no, I've been doing natural magic, like nature magic. And then through my exposure to Robert Anton Wilson and looking for more stuff from him, I came into contact with Falcon Press. And through Falcon Press, of course, like I basically called them up and because you could do that back then. And I said, yeah, I want your catalog. And it turns out I was talking to Nick Tharcher, who I'm still friends with to this day. But in fact, Falcon publishes me now. But back then, I was just some dude in Chicago. Send me your catalog, And I literally just started working my way through their catalog and ordering stuff. And there was an occult bookshop in Chicago that I used to go to on Clark Street. And so I started going in and talking to them. And it was run by witches. And I said, like, I'm coming across all this stuff about the Golden Dawn. Do you know anything about them? And they're like, oh, yeah, they're cool. You might want to try some of that. Like, we know a lodge here in the city. You might want to join up with them. So, like, they put me into touch with people that could help me and get me started. Yeah. And so, through that and through that connection, I started doing Hermetic magic. And it was real natural for me. For some reason, I picked up on it really quick because I was already doing a lot of stuff that I didn't know came from the Golden Dawn. Like most people don't know that Wicca came from Crowley, came from Golden Dawn. Gerald Gardner was a student of Crowley, and Crowley was Golden Dawn. It all comes from the Golden Dawn. Either that or Theosophy. So like one or the other. It all tracks back to one of those two sources. So yeah. So basically, I was already starting to work in the Hermetic magic and starting to talk to people, and I joined a lodge, and so that's kind of what happened.
So this whole thing was really a true initiation.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All parts of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the meantime, I'm running across all this information and like I'm getting catalogs and sending off to things in these catalogs. And so I discover High Frontiers, which was being published out of Berkeley at the time. I think it was being done on a Xerox machine. And so I ordered that. And so I'm reading that. And they were talking about Leary and the Eighth Circuit model, and I'm reading Leary and the Eighth Circuit model, and I'm reading Wilson, who's big on the Eighth Circuit model, and Leary and PKD, and like all this stuff. Like all of a sudden, I'm in this new world, and I'm surrounded by these new ideas, all of which I'm like, I feel familiar. They feel familiar to me. So I'm like, okay, I don't know this, but I know this.
Right.
And then I start to notice like everything is pointing to the Bay Area of California, like everything. Philip K. Dick lived in Berkeley. High Frontiers coming out of Berkeley. Leary and Wilson very tied to Berkeley. And like all these other zines I'm getting, like all coming out of the San Francisco Bay Area of California. And then around that time, I go to this New Age bookstore, and they started to carry the Falcon stuff because I turned them on to it. I'm like, you should carry this stuff. So they started to carry the Falcon stuff. And I'm buying like everything I see by Falcon, I'm buying it off the shelf.
Yeah.
And then I see a flyer that says appearing at the Zen Center, which is, again, just blocks away from where I was living.
Right.
Robert Anton Wilson. I'm like, oh, okay.
No
yeah.
fucking way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as it turns out, he lived in Chicago for a long time, and he was an editor at Playboy, and Playboy was headquartered in Chicago. So he was an old Chicago head. So like I'm getting like all these weird Bay Area is really where it's happening. Like is where you need to be. And of course, by this time, by everything I've described to you so far, you ought to understand that I wasn't questioning anything I was picking up in the wind.
Right. Like you were going for it. Like that you were taking that as a signal coming from something.
Exactly. I wasn't double thinking it at all. And I really didn't have a lot of responsibilities. I mean, I had a record store job, take it or leave it. I liked working in record stores, but like...
Yeah, you're like 23, 24.
Yeah. So I'm like, I can do whatever I want. Like working at record stores was fun, but it was dead end.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to lead me to anything that I wanted. I had a good support group. Like Chicago has a great art scene. There was a lot of crazy experimental guerrilla theater things going on that I was involved in.
Right.
There was a brilliant literary scene that I was involved in, but like still nothing I was married to.
Right.
Because all of my stuff that I was reading now, all the influences that I was like luxuriating in was all coming out of California.
Yeah.
I came back to my house one time, and my girlfriend at the time was an artist, and we were living in this loft that basically this is going to crack you up. It was a storefront that I had turned into a used bookstore, which was basically an excuse to open the doors and have people come in and to meet weird, cool people. That's really what it was. Because it didn't, I mean,
it's an excellent way to do it.
Yeah, we didn't even make the rent, but we were living in the back, and like it had a loft that you could live in, had kitchen, it had everything you needed to live in the back. So we were living in that. Like the bookstore was basically open. So I had a lot of people that used to come to the bookstore every day and sit in the overstuffed chairs and read the books and not buy a goddamn thing. But I didn't care.
Yeah.
That wasn't the point. I wasn't in it to make money. I was in it to create a gathering space. And then I used to, like, on Thursday nights, I used to like make big pots of spaghetti because that's cheap to make. Yep. And then I'd just have free dinners, and like everybody would come over for the free dinner, and we'd buy boxes of wine and smoke pot, and we would just sit around and smoke hash and pot and drink wine and eat spaghetti and talk about art. And then
that's fucking rad.
And then every once in a while, I had friends who were in the theater. They would like put on a play in the back, and they like it was called we called it the Black Box Theater, and people would just show up and they'd do a play that somebody had written. And it was. Yeah, it was like a great environment. People would come over and drop acid and stay all night, and like it was like an open door policy. Like every crazy weirdo on the street that knew me used to come over and like hang out, and like there was even, check this out, you're gonna love this. There was a local beat cop named Bob the Cop, and one day he wanders the fuck in the middle of one of the spaghetti dinners, and like everybody's smoking some sort of weed or something, and half the people are high on something, and he just walks in full uniform. He just walks in, and we're just like so fucked up that we didn't care. We're just like, hey, what's up? It's like instead of like running, we just all kind of sat there, and then he's like walks up to me. He's like, I'm told that this is your place. I'm like, damn right. He's like, well, I hear you do poetry readings here. Yeah. He's like, I write poetry. Can I read? I'm like, fuck yeah, dude. So like he became,
That's incredible.
everybody called him Bob the Cop, and he wrote brilliant poetry. He used to come over in uniform, stand on the little stage and read poetry to us. And he told me to my face, he said, I'm going to, like, as long as my car is parked in front of your store, nobody's going to fuck with your shit. In other words, like, you're not going to get robbed.
Wow.
I'm like, okay. Some of my friends might get nervous though, Bob. He's like, well, then put the word out. Like, you know, like, I'm here and I don't care what you guys are doing. I'm like, okay. So I did.
That's awesome.
So he became accepted as Bob the Cop.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Bob the Cop.
Fuck yeah.
Bob the Cop used to like come over and read his poetry. A Chicago cop, nonetheless, because Chicago cops are notorious for not being cool. And, you know.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing what happens when you do just like sort of open yourself up to experiences like that.
Yeah. And I'm sure he put the word out to his buddies, like, you know, like, I'm hanging out over there, so like it's all cool.
Yeah.
He probably didn't tell him like I'm reading poetry and the people there. He never
probably not.
Yeah, he never partook in anything. He never smoked or drank or anything, but like he wrote some wicked poetry. It was really cool.
That is really cool.
He would sit there and read his poetry, and we'd sit around like, "Whoa, Bob the Cop, yay!" You know. So, you know, like I come home one day and like it just came through to me. I'm like, everything's California, 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 California. And
yeah. Did you go and see Robert Anton Wilson at the Zen Center?
I did. I went to see him, and I was standing outside the Zen Center because back then I smoked, and I was smoking a cigarette, and he came out before the show.
Yeah.
Speaking engagement, whatever you're going to call it. He came out and bummed a cigarette from me and then told me to promise to never tell his wife if I ever met her that he was bumming cigarettes. And I did meet her, and I never did tell her. Because he used to bum cigarettes from me fucking all the time after that. Because he like I just read in this new biography that was just written about him, which is coming out like I think 2025. He quit smoking in like the 70s, supposedly. And I never saw Bob quit smoking ever because like whenever I hung out with him, he always bummed cigarettes off of me. Always. And then always told me the same damn thing. Don't tell Arlen. I'm like, I'm not going to tell Arlen. So she thought he had quit smoking like in the 70s sometime. And like, but he never quit smoking. He just didn't smoke at home.
At this point, he's just like a writer you idolized bumming a cigarette from you for the first time.
Yeah. And then we had this long conversation because I got there like, you know, hour early because I didn't know where this place was. I'm like, there's a Zen Center in Chicago. So, and it didn't have a sign on it. It was just a house that had been converted into a Zen Center. I'm like looking for the address again, no Google Maps or anything. Like you just have to figure this out.
Right.
And I'm looking for this address and I'm like, I better go over there early so I know where this place is. And so I did. And then there was Bob and like we ended up talking and I'd been playing around with computers already at that point. And I was telling him, oh, I just got Timothy Leary's mind map application. And he's like, oh, how do you like that? I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, there's some things I would change about it. And I was telling him, like, you know, I do this and maybe I do that. And I'd like to do an application that did that. But, you know, he's like, well, then I said, maybe somebody like Leary will create something like that. And he goes, why don't you write it? Like, yeah, why don't I? Good question. So, and then we were talking, I was telling him, like, everything I'm seeing is like all about the Bay Area of California. He's like, oh, you sound like you belong in the Bay Area. And that like put the cherry on the top of the cake for me. Like, okay. I mean, I didn't tell him I'm going to go move to the Bay Area now, but I was just like ding, ding, ding. It kind of went off in my head. It's like everything's pointing to the Bay Area.
I mean,
Robert Anton Wilson just said you belong in the Bay Area. Why aren't you in the Bay Area? There's nothing holding you here.
And it was his work that kicked off all of this.
Yes. Well, I mean, it was an intrusive initiation on the streets of Chicago, which kicked me towards finding his work, which kicked all of this off. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So,
so you just did it? How soon after that?
I think that night. I think I went home and told my girlfriend, I'm like, we don't have a lease. We're month to month here. Yeah. I'm like, why don't we go to California? And she's just like, looks at me. And I think you can see the wheels in her head turning. She's like, we got nothing we're attached to here, really. She's like, yeah, okay. Because, you know, she was an artist. She was open to it.
Yeah.
And she'd been seeing me go through what I'd been going through. Or as she later put it years later,
right.
She's like, watching you peel back the layers of your onion. And she said, I didn't see anything negative coming out of what you were doing. You seem to be becoming even a better person.
Word.
And I'm like, cool. Okay. So then I talked to the person that I'm renting the space from, and I'm like, you know, we're probably going to bail at this is the beginning of the month. Like, we're going to stay through the month, and then we're going to like close the bookstore, and we're going to head off to California. And he was like, okay. He's like confused. Told all my friends, they were confused. Yeah. My friends were all confused. They're like, but the bookstore, the Black Box Theater. I'm like, there's no reason why you guys can't do this without me. Like, you don't need me to do this.
Right.
Like, do your thing. Like, you don't need me. And then we basically like just started paring down. And at the time we had, we just bought a fairly new car, which was a Yugo. You may not know what that is, but it was a car that came out of Yugoslavia. It was, yeah. It was a tiny little car that you could get for brand new off the showroom floor for $3,000.
Amazing.
Well, it was a piece of shit.
That's like such a classic scene. Like, this is tiny fucking cheap car.
Yeah.
Packing everything in there.
Yeah.
Off to California.
I mean, I bought one of those car top carriers because I had so many books that most of the books took up most of the car top carrier. And in fact, when I got to California, there was like, you could see where the top of the car was sinking down. Like the metal had like started to sink down. It's like, that's how heavy the car top carrier was. But we made it. We got there with our cat, the books, the cat, and our clothes. That's basically what we took. And some records, lots of actually
modern day wizard's journey.
Lots of CDs and cassette tapes. And so we're headed to Berkeley. That's the plan. We're headed to Berkeley.
Yeah.
And so I want to see Big Sur because I'm a Kerouac fan. I'm a Henry Miller fan. I gotta make the pilgrimage to Big Sur. Like, you know, I gotta do that. So we stop in LA. Instead of going up to the Bay Area, I go down through Southern California. I go to LA. I hit all the spots I want to see in LA. Oh, that's where Jim Morrison lived, blah, blah, blah. Then we drive north on the 1.
Yeah.
And then we go through Big Sur. We stop at the Henry Miller Museum, which is what his house has become. At that time, in 84 or 5, you could still walk down the creek and find the cabin that Ferlinghetti owned that Kerouac lived in when he wrote the book Big Sur. It's gone now, but like you could still find the cabin back then. And so I went and paid homage to Jack, and then got back in the car and drove a little farther north. And getting low on gas and needing some coffee, I see this town that I've never heard of before, Santa Cruz. And I look at my girlfriend. I'm like, Saints Crossing.
Never heard of it before.
That must be where we got to go. Yeah, never heard of it before. And so we pull over and just get some gas, and then we go pull downtown. And like, let's get some coffee. Where do we go? And I look over and I see a coffee shop. And on the cork board, which is on the front of the coffee shop, is a picture of J.R. Bob Dobbs. Now,
there you go.
At this time in history, the Church of the Subgenius was pretty underground still.
Yeah.
And I look at that and I go, that must be our place. Now,
yeah.
I'd been to California before, but I'd never been to Santa Cruz. I hitchhiked up the 101 when I was younger. Like when I was in college, I used to go to California and hitchhike up and down the 101 and up and down the 1, but just never stopped in Santa Cruz. Didn't even know it existed. I went to Big Sur and, camped on the beach and things like that, but like never like stopped in Santa Cruz. So like stop in this town called Santa Cruz, stop at this place, this coffee house called Cafe Chameleon, which is gone now. The building is still there, but the cafe's gone. And there's J.R. Bob Dobbs, like the flag, like saying, come to me. Cafe Chameleon turned out to be where the freakish of the freaks of Santa Cruz, and that's saying something, hung out. It was like the place where like people like Rob Bresney and like all these like crazy, freakish people hung out. There was like an OTO lodge that used to hang out in there, and like all these weird people. For me, I was like, whoa, this is what we were looking for.
Yeah.
And so we start talking to them because they're friendly. It's a small town and it's a surf town, and they're friendly. And they hear our story and they're like, no, dude, you don't want to go to Berkeley. Berkeley's where it was happening. Everybody that was happening in Berkeley are here now. Fuck Berkeley. Berkeley's done. Like, it's all happening here now. And I'm like a little skeptical. So like they take me on a trip, like, because we're downtown. They take me on a trip through the downtown, and there's like jugglers and fire breathers and people reading poetry and street performers, like all up and down the main street, which is called the Pacific Garden Mall. It's like all up and down this area. Like there's nothing but people like doing weird shit.
Yeah.
And like giant, like there's like 5 bookstores on this one main street, like big, crazy, like awesome bookstores with like great used collections, and like 3 or 4 record stores. And like, I'm just like looking at this, I'm like, holy shit. And then what really sold me was they pointed out this hotel, which is gone now, but they pointed this hotel out, and they're like, there's like 4 people that have permanent rooms in there that come here to write. And they named, like, Ferlinghetti was one of them. Like all these beat people like had rooms in this old beat up hotel where they would come and write because it was inspiring. Because Santa Cruz downtown was inspiring because it was before the earthquake. And so I like look at my girlfriend, I look at them, I'm like, okay, let's see about getting a room, and we'll stay for a week and see if we like it. So I go over the hill by the beach, and there's like all these seedy surfer motels that you can basically get a room with a kitchenette for $125 a week. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, let's get a room for a week or two and let's see if we like it. And then we never left. I walked 2 blocks away from that motel, and there was for rent a 1-bedroom apartment with a deck overlooking the beach. And it was for some ridiculous $200 a month or something price.
Wow.
And so I went like, hey, you want?
That's insane.
And I rented it. Well, at that time, this was called the surfer slums or the beach flats of Santa Cruz. It was a highly undesirable neighborhood for most people with money, with money. But everybody that lived in that neighborhood were people that I liked. It was like surfers, down and out riders, druggies, you know, my people.
Yeah. This must have blown your fucking mind.
Not right away. Like, no, it was like only when I look back on it, I'm like, wow, that was like weirdly fortuitous, you know? But I was just like, I was like, back then I was just taking it as it comes and not questioning it.
Right.
So we move into that apartment, and then I'm out on the deck, like looking at like I've got an apartment that overlooks the ocean. Ugh, with a deck. Ugh. To me, I was like in heaven, you know? Kid from Chicago. I'm like, I don't live in some scummy, rundown neighborhood in Chicago. I'm on the beach where like there's wind and I can smell the ocean, you know.
I mean, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, I mean, now that's like I ended up moving back there many years later, and it was like it's not so cheap even then. Like I moved back there in 99. So I move into this place, and I'm up on the deck, and I look down, and there's a lady doing Tai Chi. So the people on the first floor had gardens in the back behind their apartments, and people on the second floor had a deck. And I look down into the garden, and there's this elderly lady doing Tai Chi. And I said, good morning. And she said, oh, you're the new neighbor. I'm like, yeah. She's like, come on down. So I go down, and we start talking. And she asked me if I want to get high. Of course I do. She gets high, which is amazing because she's like 70 something, which, you know, in Santa Cruz is not unusual, but for a kid from Chicago, that was very unusual. And so I'm talking to her, and as it turns out, she's Timothy Leary's secretary from Millbrook. Her name was Nina Gerboy.
Jesus Christ.
And I'm like, wait, I moved right above you? And we start talking, and Bob Wilson and I had traded numbers, and we'd stayed in touch by phone. And I asked her, I'm like, do you know Bob Wilson? Oh, yeah, I know Bob. His children live here in town. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, they're here in town, like here in Santa Cruz. She's like, yeah. I'm like, I had no idea that he even had kids. Well, I guess I knew that, but I didn't know he had kids here. And so she starts telling me everybody that lives in the building. So the guy that lives upstairs, like at the penthouse part, there's like one penthouse on the pinnacle of this building.
Yeah.
It's Bob Forty. So he's friends with Rupert Sheldrake, Gordon Wasson.
Wow. Okay.
Albert Hoffman, Timothy Leary, the McKennas. He's friends with everybody. So
all the psychedelic scientists and thinkers.
Yeah. And then Nina tells me like, well, like I'm still friends with Tim, but like I was at Millbrook when he was there, and like now I work for Ralph Abraham. I'm like the chaos mathematician. She's like, yeah. She's like, he teaches at UC Santa Cruz. I'm like, okay, all right. I'm just going to accept this. Okay, this is what's happening. This is where I'm at. And then my next door neighbor, Jeff Green, ended up being friends with these two people in Colorado that were putting out a zine called Boing Boing. It just started. It was a print zine at the time. It was only print. He's like, you could probably write for my friends Mark and Carla that do this zine. They're just starting. Okay. So I'm like getting connected. Like then I found out that I tell Nina Gerboy, I'm like, well, I'm really into this magazine that was coming out of Berkeley called High Frontiers had changed their name to Reality Hackers. And then they were just about to change their name to Mondo 2000, or maybe they had just changed their name to Mondo 2000. So I told her, I'm like, I was reading this magazine, like all this stuff coming out of Berkeley, and that's where I was headed. But like, turns out this is a cool place, and I think I should be here. And she's like, oh, yeah, I know Ken and Allison. I'm like, the people that run Mondo? She's like, yeah, they come here all the time. I'm like, okay, so I don't have to go to Berkeley. So, okay, all right, never mind. I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
A town I've never heard of, and here I am. And this is where Bob Wilson's kids are. And then gets better. I talk to Bob, and he says, oh, yeah, Arla and I are going to move up there pretty soon. Like to Santa Cruz? He's like, yeah, we want to be about the kids. I'm like, okay, well, I'm here, Bob. I'm already here. See you when you get here.
Did you ever get the feeling that like the Illuminati had kidnapped you?
Dude, I knew something was going on. I just don't know what was going on.
Yeah.
But I didn't question it too much because I didn't want to because one thing I learned in working with magic, even back then I knew this, is if you do too much rational questioning, it'll disappear.
Yeah. Yep.
It'll slide sideways on your ass and then it'll be gone. And I didn't want that to happen. I'm like, I don't know what this is, but I'm not going to question too much of what it is because I'm having a good goddamn time. And I keep ending up in the right place by not thinking about what I'm doing. If I would have planned to move to Santa Cruz, California, it probably wouldn't have worked out the way it did.
Right. Of course.
I moved to California on a whim to go to Berkeley, and I ended up in a town I'd never heard of, which ended up being the place I was looking for. So Chapel Perilous, again, the journey, if you remember how we started this conversation, Parsival starts out and he meets somebody who has the Grail, who shows him the Grail, and he doesn't recognize the Grail because he's not ready. And he goes through all this journey and all this time, his whole lifetime, to finally realize that he saw the Grail. He's like, oh, shit. All the way back in the beginning of this journey, I saw what I was looking for.
Yeah.
So he went back to get the Grail. And so it's like I'm on a Grail quest because, the Grail is not a thing. It's an idea.
Of course.
And I'm looking for this idea that I can't describe. All I know is like there's something happening. There's this thing happening. Today, I guess we'd call it a vibe. There's a vibe happening.
Yeah.
That's definitely has a lot of energy around it. It's very dynamic. And I want to be where that's coming from. I want to be around the people who are generating that. And so the closest I could get was like California, California, California. And then my brain said, well, it all seems to be coming from the Bay Area and probably Berkeley. Because what I didn't know was there was this other town that was really where it was coming from, but I didn't even know about that town.
Right.
It's at the appropriately named Saints Crossing, Santa Cruz.
Right.
And later people told me, many seekers end up here because this is where the saints cross.
Interesting. And so how much of that is there's the opening of the Ong's Hat documents seems to be a pretty not veiled at all metaphor for this scene.
You've been searching for us without knowing it? Yeah, that has been pointed out to me many, many times. You will be surprised to know that I didn't put that together until much later.
I'm kind of surprised, but also that's kind of how it happens. You don't realize that you're telling something deeply personal until you've told it.
Yeah, when I write, I kind of do it in a trance, and so that's why I call my stuff received wisdom, a received work, because quite literally, this has happened to me before. I was doing an interview fairly recently, and somebody read a passage from Zen, and I thought to myself, "That's pretty cool. I wonder who wrote that." But I didn't say it, and then they said, that was from Joseph Matheny's writing as Ezra Buckley in Zen, the Zen of the Other, and I'm thinking like, "Wow, that's pretty cool. When did I write that?"
Oh fuck!
But I didn't. But I didn't say it out loud.
Right.
Because like that's how I work. It's like I don't let myself get in the way, and oftentimes I don't even know what I wrote. Like I go back later to edit sometimes, and I'm like, I wrote that? Wow, what was I thinking? Well, that's pretty cool, but I don't remember. I don't recall writing it.
That's crazy.
So like many years later, other people started pointing things out to me. They're like, well, this is about you. This is about this part of your life. And I'm like,
right.
Oh, yeah. Instead of going, oh, yes, of course it was. I just go, oh, yeah. Because I really didn't put it together because it's not meant as a personal telling of something from my life. Basically, This is the way it works. I put myself in a state of mind so I'm not in the way. I receive the work and I write it. And then I know that because it's going through the filter of me, the person, it's going to pick up residuals of me, the consciousness, me, the memories, me, the me, right? It's going to have that residue. There's no way it couldn't. It couldn't express itself unless there was a human here to be the filter to express it.
Exactly. What
the human me is expressing is something that came through from the collective unconscious, through my unconscious, and as little of my conscious mind as I can have involved so I can put the fingers together to type and put the grammar rules together to make a coherent sentence. But that's as much as I want to get in the way. Yes, of course, it's got me in it. It's got to have me in it. It's because it came through me, but it didn't come out of me. It's not conscious me. I'm not Stephen King. I don't sit down and like, and now I'm going to write these 5 lines, and I don't do that.
You didn't engineer it so much as channel it.
I just groove. I just get in the groove, and it comes through.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to come through when I start writing, and I'm often surprised when I go back and read it. Oftentimes surprised, and sometimes I just don't even recognize it.
So now that you've gotten to Santa Cruz, would you say that this is the true like launch pad? I guess.
Well, I had to get here first. I had to get to California. I had to get to Santa Cruz, and I had to get to 321 2nd Street, the apartment building.
Yep.
All of which I did without thinking about it. Where I was living in a city where I felt completely supported. I felt like I was in the weirdo zone where it was actually okay to be weird. You were encouraged to be as weird as you wanted to be. You were applauded for being yourself.
Yeah.
Which, me being myself for most people is considered pretty weird, as I've discovered over the years. Like I'm definitely way off the beaten path personality wise. And in fact, I think I can say this. I've never been diagnosed, but I'm definitely neuroatypical. I know that. These days, if I was a young person these days, I'd probably have ended up medicated somehow.
You've got that ADHD energy.
Yeah, I've got the ADHD energy, and I've definitely got I'm not neurotypical, so like I really think way outside the box, and I'm comfortable with it. I'm okay with it. And Santa Cruz, California, in 1985, 86, probably 86 at this time,
was also comfortable with it.
Was probably the only place in the universe that I could have found where I'd be like completely at home. And out of all of that whole city, I found the building that was the most at home of the home. It's like you found the town
right at the heart
with the biggest weirdos around. That's home to the university of the biggest weirdos around. Like the University of California, Santa Cruz is like home of the weirdo academic, intellectual.
Yeah.
And then I found the building where they all lived. And without looking for it.
It's incredible.
And like when I tell the story, here's the most amazing thing. I'm telling you this story now, and I've written it down like in rough form before this. But I only started to tell the story when people started to ask me how did the Young's Hat thing start?
Yeah.
I never actually sat down and thought about it before. And I never actually sat down and even had a conversation about, like, I showed up at 321 2nd Street. Nobody asked me how I got there. They were just like, welcome. Wow. It's like, they looked at me like, one of us, come on in.
That's great.
Nobody asked me, like, how did you end up here?
Insane.
How did you end up in Santa Cruz? How did you end up at this building? Nobody ever asked me. It wasn't, and even I didn't really think about it until I sat down and wrote out the rough draft of this story that I'm telling you now. And that's when I sat down and went, nobody's going to believe this shit. I don't believe this shit now that I'm writing it down. It's like, I can't believe how many different weird synchronicities on top of synchronicity had to happen for me to end up there at that time with those people.
I have a feeling that they probably had a similar set of impossible synchronicities too.
I think so, because like I told you, there were people that said to me, of course you ended up here. This is Saints Crossing. This is where we all meet.
Right.
And I just took that as a Santa Cruz thing to say, and it is. But now that I think about it, there's more to it than that. They were kind of telling me this is where the wretched refuse washes up. and we're all wretched refuse here, Yeah. But everybody in that building, the younger people at least, the older people stayed there and like they all passed away. Another weird thing happened, which we can go into later. But like, I left years later. I left and I went over the hill to Silicon Valley and did what I was doing over there. And then I got homesick, and so I moved back and I bought a house on that hill, like literally half a block away from the apartment building. A lot of the people were still living in the apartment building. And within a year of me moving back, 3 people that I had moved back to be near passed away. So I moved back just in time to be there for their passing.
Wow.
So that's the kind of energy that was going on in that hill.
Yeah.
So like as soon as I got to know Nina, she started to call everybody in town that she knew and say like, hey, new person's here, and introduced me to everybody in town who was the people. Which
is another sort of initiation.
Yeah. I mean, basically she was my gateway drug. She was like, let me introduce you to this person and that person, because she knew everybody. I mean, she introduced me to Timothy Leary. She introduced me to Allen Ginsberg. She introduced me to Diane DePrima, who I became great friends with. Like, she introduced me to every fucking buddy.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing.
Crazy.
I was just talking about this yesterday to the Cambridge people. Esalen was just up the road from Santa Cruz. And all the people who would go to Esalen, which was, everybody who's anybody in the psychedelic community, would stop by Santa Cruz to see Nina on their way to Esalen. So Nina would tell everybody, Dennis McKenna is going to be here tomorrow. Come on by and have tea with us.
Yeah.
And we'd all show up, and Dennis would be there, and we'd party. So like that became, we came up with a name for that group. Elizabeth Gibbs came up with the name, which is another name in psychedelic history you should know. She came up with the name. She said we should call our salon the Formless Ocean Group, the Fog. You get it?
Yeah.
We're all lost. Yeah. We're all lost in the fog, and every day in Santa Cruz there's fog until the sun burns it off. It's called the marine layer. And so like we were the fog. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So then we became the Formless Ocean Group, and it was basically everybody who was anybody in town which included Robert Anton Wilson and Arlen when they moved there. Nick Herbert, which is how I got to know Nick Herbert because of the Formless Ocean Group.
Yeah.
Ralph Abraham, a bunch of people, and then whoever happened to be coming through town that week. And it was always somebody, Tim Leary or Terrence never made it because he was getting too famous at that time, I think, and he was always on the road. But Dennis, his brother, came through a lot. Rupert Sheldrake came through, Stan Groff, like all these big names would come by because they'd go pay homage to Nina because she was like this saint that everybody knew in the community. And they'd come by and say hello and we stop by and say hello. And so, it was like this power center. It's like I'd recommend to everybody read her book at some point. It's called One Foot in the Future. She was amazing. She escaped the Nazis and it's like she had a great life. I mean, not that having to flee for your life is not good, but like at least escaping is good.
Right.
But yeah, she had like this action-packed life. Oh, she was friends with John Lilly. I met John Lilly because of her. She knew there was not anybody she didn't know.
Yeah.
Like if you said a name, Sasha and Ann Shogan, I met them because of her. Like if you said a name, she knew them.
Yeah.
And they knew her. You'd say Nina Gerboy, like, oh, Nina, how is she? She was like everybody's grandmother.
And did the whole Chapel Perilous weirdness start to abate once you had gotten there? Like now that you'd found the place that was calling you? I know that this period of my life, most serene periods of my life in memory, I was never as happy and as serene as I was those years that I lived in that building. And all of the experiences that happened while I was living in that building is why the Ong's Hat game happened.